Hello and good evening, national readers. You are joining us on the first day of the general election campaign. I already feel like it's been a week somehow, but here we are. My name is Laura Webster. I am the editor of The National, and I'm joined by Xander Elliards, who is our content editor. So hello, Xander.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Laura.
I am in Edinburgh today at our Holyrood office here in the Parliament, and Xander has been based in Glasgow. As soon as I got here, basically this afternoon, I was told there was going to be an SNP campaign launch. Kind of needed to shuffle my way down to the Grassmarket and go to that. So that's where I have been. So we thought that we would come on this evening and give you a little bit of a roundup about what was discussed at the election campaign launch and what was up with Michael Matheson as well, because that was another pretty major story that came up at both FMQs and the campaign launch today. So I made some pretty scribbly notes while I was at the Swinney speech earlier. There was two messages that he really wanted us to take away from that speech. The first one was that he wants people to unite for independence. His leadership campaign slogan was United for Independence. He's now removed the D, so it's just Unite for Independence, which is a much stronger kind of call for action. He's telling us we all need to unite together, the different factions, and it's kind of a message as well to not just independence supporters, because he spoke a lot about how he wants that message to get out to people who want to protect the NHS from privatisation, people who want to see Scotland get back into the EU. There was lots of different parts to the messaging, and he did also say that he wanted to persuade undecided voters as well. The other part of the speech that he wanted people to remember, because he said it so many times, was putting Scotland first. He's arguing that the SNP are the only party who are going to put Scotland first, whether that's about health, education, protecting devolution. There was lots of different elements in the speech. So yeah, it was a pretty short speech. It was like 10, 15 minutes, and then there was some questions after. So I am going to show you what I asked earlier, and then we can discuss that a little bit further, Xander.
Vice Minister, as things stand, a majority of seats will start negotiations with the UK government for independence. What preparation is underway now for those negotiations?
Well, obviously the government's set out the Building a New Scotland series of papers. It sets out many of the arguments that have got to be taken forward and addressed, and we'll build on the foundations of that case as we build the strength of our position in the aftermath of a successful election campaign.
So, if you didn't quite catch what I said, I wasn't on microphone. It wasn't that I was being like a little quiet mouse in the background. There was just no microphones near me. I asked John Swinney about the SNP's election strategy, which was agreed at the SNP conference all the way back in October. And that strategy is that if a majority of seats are won, then the SNP will be able to start negotiations for an independent Scotland with the UK government. Now, I have to say, from that answer that I got from John Swinney, I'm not really very sure that there is preparation going on for those negotiations. Maybe he's just being really secretive, doesn't want to reveal his hand, but I can't say he convinced me that it was even really something he had thought about. What did you think, Xander?
I think it's pretty obvious there's no preparations happening for independence negotiations. Yeah, I think that was the subtext to Swinney's answer. Just on what you were talking about earlier about Unite for Independence, this new SNP strategy. Other yes supporters who are watching will almost certainly recognise the word united from Alpa's plan, like Scotland United, that they were pushing a few months ago. They were still pushing it the other week. But the SNP have been very much like, no, we're not doing that. Everybody needs to vote SNP. And it seems like the SNP's messaging now is Scotland United, unite for independence, but everybody has to unite behind us. Like, we're the biggest vehicle. Don't split the pro-independence vote. Unite for independence. Obviously, historically, the support for independence and the support for the SNP in the polls have very much tracked together. As one went up, the other would go up. As one went down, the other would go down. But we've really seen these two divide over the last, like, God, I couldn't even put a time frame on it. I guess since like Nicola Sturgeon resigned. And since the independent support is still riding relatively high, like 50%, give or take, and the SNPs is dipping, I imagine he sees by far the quickest route of getting the SNPs back up again is just trying to convince people in the literal 6 weeks until the general election now that their vote is best spent in a first past the post election by voting for the party that's most likely to win. And if you end up dividing the pro-independence vote between ALPA, the Greens, the SNP, then the SNP could end up doing very badly out of this. So in the same way as the Tories, I think, are, well, running scared of Reform UK splitting their vote, I think John Swinney, I think this Unite for Independence messaging is very much like the SNP tacitly admitting that, like, pro-independence voters going for the Greens or ALPA because they're not happy with the SNP could damage them a lot more than people who would vote Tory now voting for Labour.
Certainly. I mean, they will be pretty concerned about that, particularly in seats like East Lothian, where Labour were in second place, I believe, at the last election, and now you have an ALBA incumbent. So it sort of makes the vote splits it three ways almost.
McCaskill isn't standing in East Lothian, though, is he? He's going to Grangemouth. So I'm not actually sure off the top of my head who is standing for ALPA in East Lothian, but I think the party has maybe decided that they maybe have a better chance with a big name like Kenny McCaskill in an area like Grangemouth, where a lot of people there are very aware of the work that he's been putting in for the future of Grangemouth, both at Westminster and also on the ground there. So interesting switch there. Definitely three-way splits in seats, definitely.
For sure. I mean, they have been campaigning really hard on Grangemouth, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to touch a little bit on Michael Matheson as well, because I don't know, I hadn't seen FMQs today, so I was kind of shocked when we got to the question part of the campaign launch, and like everyone asked about Michael Matheson. It is a big deal. It's a big story, and we've seen the polling, like, the general public is super engaged about this story. Everyone was covering it for that reason. So can you give us a little bit of a recap about what happened with Michael Matheson?
Yeah. I mean, considering the general election was announced yesterday, the SNP have had two pretty bruising developments on their first day of the campaign. One literally came in just as we were going live, so the details are very thin on the ground on that. But we have seen that the police have sent a report to the Procurator Fiscal in regards to Operation Branch Form. So details very thin on that at the moment, but not a good development for the SNP. That's not something they're going to want in the headlines. And on Matheson as well. So this morning, it was about 10:30 this morning, the Holyrood Standards Committee. There's five of them on it. Labour's Martin Whitfield, then there's two from the SNP. There was Alistair Allen and Jackie Dunbar, and then there were two Tories as well, Oliver Mundell and Annie Wells. Now, the five of them agreed unanimously that Matheson should lose 54 days of pay because, well, we all remember he racked up £11,000 iPad bill when he was roaming in Morocco. He claimed he was doing constituency work and the taxpayer had to pay it. And then he rode back on that, admitted that he'd actually been, well, his sons had been watching football, and finally agreed to pay the money himself. It has really cut through this story. It's been very damaging for the SNP, I think, with the general public. And this is not the day the SNP would have wanted this to happen. I can't imagine, with FMQs and everything. So, God, a lot happened.
How can you keep it as short as possible?
Sorry. The committee, I said they unanimously recommended docking his pay for 54 days, but they didn't unanimously recommend a 27-day suspension. Now, the SNP people on the committee, they opposed that, which was actually proposed by Annie Wells. Now, those recommendations will have to go to Parliament. Parliament will have to vote on whether or not the sanctions against Matheson should be upheld. John Swinney was asked at FMQs whether or not he would back the sanctions. And I think his answer came as quite a surprise. I'm not sure many of us in the kind of Holyrood watching world were anticipating it. What he said was that Annie Wells, obviously you remember the Tory MSP that proposed this 27-day suspension in the first place, that she had prejudged the outcome of the inquiry, prejudiced everything, basically, with some pretty damning statements. I mean, John Swinney undoubtedly has a point. Like, he's saying, if you were an employee at a warehouse and you were called into a tribunal and one of the judges on the tribunal had publicly said, before that tribunal even began, this person's guilty as sin, it's a cover-up, you wouldn't want that person sat on your tribunal. You would have every right to get them removed and ask for a fair hearing. Swinney's saying that Matheson has been denied a fair hearing because Annie Wells prejudged the outcome, prejudiced the outcome, and yeah, that's basically his position, which does make sense. Whether it makes sense politically right now on the first day of a general election, time will tell. But obviously, there's some very, very tricky arithmetic the SNP have to do now. They're running a minority government at Holyrood. Every seat matters. So will they want to give up a seat and suddenly it becomes much, much harder? Well, assuming that they don't win the by-election, which obviously they might win the by-election, but that's a gamble they maybe don't want to take. But then are they sacrificing a few MPs who are there? Because everybody knows how tight a lot of these races across Scotland is going to be in the general election in, as we said, literally 6 weeks. So this kind of negative publicity is just not going to be doing them any favours. They're not going to be, toasting Michael Matheson at SNP HQ later.
No, probably not. Right. I've got some stuff to file before I finish up, but I wish that we could have made this a little bit longer because there is actually quite a lot to discuss. Obviously, there's been so much happened today because
it's been like the busiest news day I can maybe ever remember. I mean, we've had the Labour campaign launch. We've had the Tory campaign launch, Sunak in Wales, England, and he's basically in Scotland already. I think he landed in Inverness about an hour ago. We've had Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary at the COVID inquiry. We've had the Matheson committee report. We've just had the branch form development. It's been a
Paula Venables.
Oh my God, yeah, that was this morning.
Yeah, she was still speaking.
It's been a wild first day of a general election campaign, and what are the next 42 going to be like? I have no idea.
God, I know. Well, the thing is, national readers, you are well served by us because we took some time out amid all of that madness to figure out exactly what our campaigning strategy is going to look like. We are going to be covering as much as we can. I know we're a smaller team compared to some of our competitors in the Scottish media, but we are going to be here, there, and everywhere over the next few weeks. And particularly Hamish, our poor Westminster correspondent, who is being dragged back up the road so that he can cover stuff from up here. We'll have some fantastic multimedia content, podcasts, video interviews with some of your favorite columnists and contributors. There's going to be incredible profiles of each constituency and all of the big important target seats, what's going on there. There's going to be amazing, like, shareable videos. There's so much coming up. There's so much coming up. So stay tuned to our website. Make sure that you have a subscription. This is definitely the time to take out a subscription. You don't want to miss anything over the next few weeks. And tomorrow, I know we'll have tons going on as well because we've got Keir Starmer visit. I'm not really allowed to say very much about that probably yet.
But probably not allowed to say anything about that yet.
There's something to do with Keir Starmer.
That Labour may be doing similar to the Tories and also visiting north of the border, but we can't possibly confirm nor deny whether those suspicions are true. Yes, we will just keep quiet about that. And then there's also a Scottish Greens event as well at some point. So we'll be at both of those and we'll bring you all the updates. Anyway, that's us. Got to go file some stuff so that you've got a newspaper to read tomorrow, really. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you probably very soon, maybe tomorrow for another update. Tomorrow, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Xander.
Cheers.
Bye.